Juanita Wheeler, thank you very much for being with us today on the Fluent English Pro podcast.
You're very welcome, and thank you so much for inviting me.
Juanita, you are the perfect person for this podcast because you help people to speak in public. And one of the biggest fears people have is speaking in public. I've heard even it's a more common fear than dying. Yeah, if I'm not wrong. And if
You're
it's
not
challenging,
wrong.
yeah. And if it's challenging for a person who is a native English speaker, it's maybe even more challenging for someone who is not a native English speaker. Before we dive into that, tell us a little bit about yourself, how you got into helping other people with public speaking.
Yes. Well, I didn't come to public speaking naturally. I am a screaming introvert. So I much preferred to put what I was trying to argue for in writing. But what I discovered in the corporate world and also in causes that I was trying to champion is that not everybody likes to read. So it didn't matter how great my proposals were in writing. People needed somebody to stand up and talk to them and champion their ideas. So I did a deep dive. I'm a bit of a geek. So I went and read everything I could about the neuroscience and the neuroeconomics and the behavioral psychology of persuasion because I wanted to persuade people to say yes to my ideas. And then I gathered all these different ideas from all these different places, but all evidence-based, put them into a strategy that could work for me as someone who is very nervous about public speaking, and started doing it for myself as the guinea pig. And then as I got better and better at it and I was having success, other people were saying to me, can you please teach me how to speak in the way that you do? And because it's getting results and I want to get results and have people say yes to my ideas. And so then I started doing that and teaching it. And what I quickly found, both through doing it in my company, Full and Frank, because I am, but also through my working with TED. So I run a TED event. So with that, and also with my work, it's my purpose. My entire purpose, the reason I get up in the morning is to help people around the world to put their ideas in a perfect way that will persuade people to say yes.
That's great. And I think as a life experience, Juanita is also an example of how you can turn a challenge into a strength.
Absolutely. I think I was really unhappy when it wasn't working. I was frustrated. I'm like, it's not fair that I've put this great proposal together and I'll be in a room championing it and people will have shown up and not read it. But then somebody, let's call him Chad, will get up in the room and just, use his grade 12 speech and drama skills and be very charming, and people will gravitate towards that. And I got really frustrated and I'm like, that's not fair. And what I quickly realized was, whining and whinging about it not being fair was not helping me at all and my ideas. It was just letting it continue. So I decided I can just sit back and let this happen, or I can take charge and find a really smart way that is working smarter, not harder, to become and gain this skill. Because public speaking as a skill is no longer optional. That's what I had to realize. It's not an optional thing. If you are passionate about your career trajectory, your business, a community you serve, ideas you want to champion, or research that you have to be prepared to stand up and champion it to audiences. And that includes speaking to them, whether it's in a boardroom, whether it's in a team meeting, or whether it's in an auditorium to 2,000 people. No one will champion your ideas as well as you can. And you can learn how to do it. There is absolutely nothing about public speaking that you cannot learn how to do.
Mm-hmm. As a fellow introvert, I agree. I totally agree with you. I had to learn, like consciously and intentionally learn how to speak in public. My background as a teacher kind of pushed me into it as well, because you have to be in front of a 20 people group or a 40 of, I don't know, 100-person group. But yeah, it changes your life, like how you can access job opportunities, how you can access um, the experience of managing groups or teaching something, it's definitely you have to do. It's not optional for a professional. I totally agree with you.
No, but it's really interesting how how you mentioned teaching,
Hmm.
because a lot of people I work with, you need to understand that public speaking is situational. There are all
Hmm.
different types of public speaking. The first thing I say to people when they say to me, I could never do public speaking, it would terrify me, is I'll say to them, when you leave your house, do you ever speak to anyone in public? Whether it's friends, whether it's at the coffee shop, at the grocery store. If you speak to people in public, then you are already public speaking. It is just a matter of levels. So, do you have conversational public speaking at the grocery store? Great. Do you have conversational public speaking skills with friends at coffee? Some people do, and some people don't. That's just too hard. And we're like, cool, let's work on that. Do you have professional speaking in your company? Can you do it to a boardroom? Can you do it to your team? And then they're all just different levels of public speaking. And so just because somebody is really great with teaching, I often find this with school teachers, but also university lecturers. They are quite comfortable when they are in control of that room. The students have to be there. It's not optional for them. So you don't have to, they don't get the choice of whether they're there or whether they walk out and go, yeah, this is boring. I'm going to go check my phone messages outside the room, or worse still, inside the room. So it can be a real leap. A lot of the people I work with, including TEDx speakers who have brilliant ideas, they're teachers or lecturers, sometimes for 20 or 30 years. But when you say, I'm going to stand you on a TEDx stage and you're going to stand in the red circle and speak to an auditorium, that is terrifying for them because that's not their comfort zone. So just because you're proficient and potentially very highly skilled in one aspect of public speaking doesn't mean that automatically converts to confidence in another one, because they are different stages, different types of public speaking. And the more of those that you can get in your toolkit, so you can be proficient in each of them, the more confident you are going to be championing your ideas and the bigger the impact that you can have.
Hmm. Absolutely, absolutely. Okay, I think this all connects with a lot of the questions we're gonna cover today. You just touched a little bit of on each of the questions, like the scenarios where you're gonna be using your public speaking, the fear of public speaking, the levels of public speaking. Let's begin by addressing the first, like the barrier of entry to public speaking, which is fear. Fear of public speaking. So there are like two aspects of it. Maybe if you could help us understand a little bit of where that fear comes from and what could be like the initial steps so we could take to tackle that fear, or even to be able to operate with fear, because sometimes the fear will be there.
Absolutely, fear will be there. I talk about multiple stages of fear. So, 6 stages of fear that I really commonly see in all the speakers I work with. And you might have all 6 stages. You might go on a journey and have them all. You might just have some of them. But for example, you have what I call very, very premature full stop fear, which is you don't even start. You're not even looking for opportunities to speak.
Mm.
You're so certain that you can't do it. So, um, you know, which is terrible. There are great ideas floating out in the world, and they are stuck in people's shower cubicle or their office cubicle, and they never get any further because people are too afraid to share them. And so, uh, full stop, absolutely premature full stop fear stops you before you even get started. And a lot of that is driven by a range of factors. No two humans are exactly the same, but there are some things that are quite common. So, for example, imposter phenomena, where people presume they're not good enough, they're not experienced enough, they're not knowledgeable enough to get up and speak. So, that can be one of the factors that stop people. And when you hear those voices, you just need to tell them, stop, you don't get a vote. My ideas are important and worth getting out in the world. I'm not going to let you stop me before I even start. If you believe your idea will help just one person in the world, and that person might be you and your career, and that's fine. But if you think that your idea is going to help at least one person in the world, it's worth getting out and saying. So don't listen to the haters in your back of your head, because That's imposter phenomena, which is not a problem with you. If you look at the original research into the imposter phenomenon rather than imposter syndrome, I don't like that term. Syndrome suggests the problem is with you. The original research into this by some fabulous, talented female researchers, showed that it's phenomena because it's a social problem. People telling you and being constantly bombarded by messages that you're not enough, even if you are really great and have a great idea. So, imposter phenomena is one of the reasons. The other thing can be a fear of what other people will say. Will they think I'm too big for my boots? Will they think that I'm arrogant? Will they think I'm a narcissist if I get up and speak? And perhaps they've got more years in this field than I am. But if you have a brilliant idea, you get up and do it. So it's all of those kind of fears. Also, what if people find out I'm a fraud if you don't think you're good enough? I've spent all of these decades or years earning this respect in my field. What if I get up and I make a mistake and then it just disappears? There's very rarely could you make that kind of mistake in public speaking. And by the way, you do the preparation and put in the work so that doesn't happen. So all of these kind of fears come together. And so at the beginning, you've really got to ask yourself, when you hear those voices in your head saying, you're not good enough, your idea is not that good, what will people think? Will people judge me? Will people start critiquing me? Will people think I'm arrogant? Every time you hear some of that that's trying to hold you back, you need to tell that voice, you do not get a vote. You do not get to decide whether my idea gets put out in the world. I believe in my idea. I'm going to be serious and I'm going to champion it and I'm going to do it well. So set yourself up to succeed by, smart preparation. But a lot of the work that I do with people is overcoming these fears that are holding them back because, public speaking is a skill, just like any other skill, like plumbing. If you want to learn how to do plumbing, you can learn, you can research it, you can take a course in plumbing, you can get experts in plumbing to coach and mentor you, and then you practice. You will make mistakes when you initially start trying to plumb something, but you learn from the mistakes, you correct them, you move on, and you get better and better and better. And if you keep working at it, you can become a master plumber. Public speaking is no different. It is a skill. You learn about it, learn from the smartest person you can find in that field, and then practice. And you can be a master.
Yeah, practice makes the master. I agree. And it's something, if you practice it, you become better at it. If you do not practice or if you stop practicing, then like your skills are just, dwindle a bit and like, they're going to be not as strong as you wish. Um, so if we have a professional going back to what you were saying initially, in terms of what brought you into public speaking. So now we know there is a fear that you can tackle the fear. You have to deal with like these beliefs you have and with this like pressure you have around you, which sometimes it's not actual pressure. It's like something maybe like you build up in your mind because it happens a lot. But if a professional comes up and says, yeah, like, okay, but I don't need to overcome that fear because I don't need that. I don't interact with other people, or I don't like no. Like I just work in my cubicle, or I just work from home, and this and that. But that's necessary. I think that absolutely necessary. You mentioned some of that at the beginning. Why a professional needs to master, or at least to have some level of mastery of public speaking. Could you please expand a little bit more on that? Why it is not optional for a professional to have public speaking skills?
Absolutely. So I learned this personally the hard way, and I didn't enjoy the lesson, but I eventually learned it, which is not everybody enjoys reading. When decisions are made, they are made in the room, sometimes in the meeting rooms, in conference rooms, but also sometimes by the water cooler or in the lunch break room or in an elevator on the way to an event. This is where those decisions are made, and people don't make them purely by reading documentation. And that was my comfort area, was putting everything I wanted to say in writing. That's not enough. Firstly, because not everybody reads it. It's just a fact. I don't like that. I think everybody should read everything they're given, but it's true. Not everyone will read it. Some people will not read it at all before going to a meeting, and some people will skim it. But it's not enough to just do writing. You have to assume when you want to champion idea that no one's going to read your materials. I mean, make them excellent, but assume that maybe 1 in 10 will read them comprehensively. So you have to be prepared to verbally champion them, because people who do that get yeses more often than people who just submit things in writing. There are so many more things that you can convey emotionally and empathetically, and you can bring your passion and your authenticity to a presentation that you deliver. So it's absolutely essential. This is how you capture people. You bring them into your world. You explain to them what the status quo problem is that you're suggesting that you solve. Now, that might be global hunger, but it also might be how difficult it is to get your kids ready for school in the morning. If you've got your product or service or idea that will save them 10 minutes every morning for the rest of their lives while their kids are at school, that's a solution that there is a problem for. So if you can get up and you can adequately and emotionally give them stories, give them anecdotes, here is the current status quo problem, and get them on board through that experience, people are going to gravitate towards that and go, I have that problem. Or I know somebody who has that problem. Or yes, that is a real problem that we as the world need to address. Or I can see there's a market for people who can solve that problem. So you can draw them in. You can then authentically and with great authority explain to them why you are the best person to solve their problem, what your solution is, and then how it's going to make their life better. And that can be done with so much more engagement and so much more persuasive power when you're delivering it as a presentation, one human to another, than when it is just two-dimensional ink on a piece of paper. Whether I like that or not, that is the reality of the situation. So, yes, you have to still be able to do the written work. That is still important. But I have had to come to accept that that is far less important than being able to, one-on-one, in a truly authentic and persuasive manner, convince people verbally that this is the reason that you want to say yes to this.
Hey there, if you're enjoying the podcast, imagine how much more progress you could make with consistent, specialized support every week. Introducing the Fluent English Pro membership, designed specifically for busy professionals like you who want to keep improving their English even on a busy schedule. You'll find fluency activities, tutorials, mini courses, vocabulary builders, and live events, all focused on work and business English. Whether it's mastering international meetings, doing presentations, or answering tricky emails, this space is built to help you grow. If you're serious about your communication skills, visit fluentenglishpro.com/members and subscribe today. That is fluentenglishpro.com/members. Let's turn your English into your biggest professional asset. Great. That's deep. That's deep because it addresses not just the matter of communication in terms of like delivering something in a written way or in a spoken way, but also how human relationships work and how like the emotional part and the social part of interactions work and influence decision making. Yes, sometimes it is not logical only. There is also an emotional and human part to that. And you build up those aspects through face to face interaction and through speaking.
Absolutely. And there is just an ever growing pool of research that shows that while we all like to think that we make decisions based on logic and data, that's not actually true.
It is not.
No, we make decisions based on emotions and empathy and feelings, and then we use the data to back up the decision we want to make. So, yes, we will use the data. It's important to have that. But far more, we're drawn in by having an emotional connection and being inspired to say yes to something. And then we use the data to back it up. And you can get that connection and take people on that journey, because it is a journey from they either didn't know about your research, your product, your service, your idea at the beginning, or maybe they were pre-inclined to say no. And during the course of your persuasion, whether that's by the water cooler, in a one-on-one meeting with your boss, trying to convince them to give you a pay rise, or in an auditorium filled with 2,000 people, you are taking them on a journey from point A, where they're not going to say yes, to point B, when they're like, yes, sign me up, whatever it is, whether it's legislative reform, a pay rise, a new budget item, buying your product, whatever the yes is, the same principles apply. Take them on a journey of why it matters, why it will make their life better, what's the problem you're trying to solve, and what's the solution.
Mm-hmm. Great, great. Okay, that is a good segue to my next question. And I know this question could take us like a whole course on public speaking to answer. So I will just ask you like to offer like general tips or pinpoint how we can do it, which is we just covered the why of public speaking. Now my question is the how. Like, okay, I want to do this. I don't know how to organize my idea. I don't know how to structure my idea so that it's delivered in a clear way and also in a way that is engaging, that people are going to listen to me, that they're going to want to learn more. So could you please pinpoint a little bit of how I can shape those ideas?
Okay, so you're right. There are whole courses on that. I have a 12-step
Yes,
roadmap for that.
it's a
But
lot. It's a lot.
it's a lot. You're not going to, yeah. But I can give you a couple of tips for people that will make a big difference straight away. So they come in two parts. The first part is you need to think about public speaking as strategically. So a lot of people, when they first come to me, the thing that they're wanting to talk about initially is what I call stagecraft. So it is the last, if you think of public speaking and a great presentation as a 100-meter race at the Olympics, a sprint, things like what I do with my vocal modulation and where I put my hands, that's like the last 5 meters. It is just the end bit. Yes, it's important in terms of the difference of how you cross that line. Are you first or you second by, a nanosecond? It's an important final bit of polish. But all of the important work in that race that gets you to the point where you might finish first, that's everything that's done in the first 95 meters. It's all that work that puts you in a place where you can win, or in the public speaking term, where you can get the yes. So I often will say to these people, we can get to the stagecraft, absolutely, but I'll get them to give me a presentation or talk me through it. I'm like, all the smart stuff you need to do is the first bit. So you need to front end all of your speaker preparation. Like, I don't get people to open PowerPoint till step 8. We don't start drafting a script till step 7. All the smart stuff is at the beginning. It's, why are you speaking? Like, what are you trying to achieve? Do you want people to buy more products? Do you want people to get on your mailing list? Are you trying to get people, what is your reason? And then we work out what is your strategic objective, which is what are you wanting people to say yes to? Because if you don't have a strategic objective and there isn't something that you clearly want people to say yes to at the end of the presentation, then you're just flapping your gums and talking in some kind of vanity exercise. And there are better things you could do with your time. So you need to make sure that there is something that people can say yes to. So is it, at the end of this, I want you to say, yes, I'm walking over to the counter and buying your book. Or yes, I'm going to give you a pay rise. Or yes, I'm going to sign you up as one of my literary agent clients. Or yes, I'm going to publish your book. Whatever the yes is, you need to know that, because then everything you do when you're crafting your script will be based on taking your target audience, who are the people with power to do that and say yes, to get them to say yes. One of the other things, so everything has to be strategy, and that includes making sure you're speaking at the right places to the right audiences. If sometimes people, I will find they're speaking to, repeatedly speaking to rooms of 500 to 1,500 people, and then why? Can those people say yes to what you want? In that instance, it might be, I need more clients to sign up to my business. And then you find out that the audiences they're speaking to don't have their target clients in there. So they're not people who are going to sign up. And I'm like, so why are you speaking to that audience? I would rather you spoke to a room of 5 people who are all your target audience than 1,500 people who aren't. So Everything has to be done strategically. The public speaking, it doesn't matter how wonderful your public speaking is if you're speaking to the wrong audience who cannot say yes. That is just flapping your gums. So, first of all, strategy is everything. And the second quick tip that I can give you is in terms of writing your script, there are lots of different ways and comprehensive and very complex storytelling and script narrative strategies, and I love them all. But if you want to just get a really good start and a good foundation, almost basically every speaker can work their script into just 3 parts. That's what you need to do, and it will get it done. So your first part is, what is the current problem you're going to solve? Whether that's a societal problem, whether that's an ecological problem, whether that's a problem in terms of how much time people are spending shaving in the morning. It doesn't matter what the problem is, but you need to convey part one, act one is what is the problem? And part of that is explaining why they should care, why it's relevant to you. So that's how you reach out and tell people in the audience, you're my target audience, I'm speaking to you. So, for example, if you got up and initially you spoke into that first section about the challenges for women in the workplace who feeling overwhelmed, juggling the challenges of parenting and careers, you're very clearly setting up what the problem is and you'd elaborate on how that looks. Act one. Act two is where you explain your amazing product. So I talk to people often about the laundry detergent formula. If you think of an ad for laundry detergent, Act one is where you see kids covered in mud or people covered in oil from work. That's the problem. That's Act one. Act two is when you see the box of laundry powder with the amazing new enzymes, and it will tell you all about why its product is the best. So your Act two of your presentation should be your solution, your idea, what makes it different, and why it is the best thing that they could say yes to. And then Act three, in the laundry detergent ad, this is where people are they're a whiter than white, business shirts hanging on the line that have never been worn by a human. They are so clean. Or it's people sniffing the laundry, which I didn't realize people sniffed their laundry until I saw all these laundry detergent ads. But that's the happily ever after. People running around smiling and laughing at a beach in clean clothes. You need to make sure you tell them your Act three is, if they say yes to your strategic objective, which you have made very clear throughout your speech, if they say yes, what is the happily ever after for them? Not the happily ever after for you, not why it's good for your business or good for your career if they say yes. Why is this going to make their life better? Why is this going to be a win for them? Tell them they're happily ever after. So Act one, Act two, Act three. If you're writing a script and you are starting, as long as you make sure you have 3 acts and cut the waffle. If it doesn't fit into persuading your target audience to say yes, it does not need to be there. 3 acts, best tip to really get your writing going. If you know and you've come to the realization public speaking is not optional, persuasive speaking is the smart thing to do. Put your arguments and your case into 3 acts and then just start.
Great. I like it I love it because it's a very simple formula. Sometimes we overcomplicate things. We think we need to add like a lot of graphs and statistics and data and numbers to back. No, just keep it simple, address the problem, indicate the solution, and then see what the end result is for the audience.
Yes, and statistics are a really great example. Statistics can be incredibly powerful. Data can be powerful, but you need to use it sparingly for maximum impact. So one of my clients, for example, their opening line is often a statistic because it is so powerful. They will say, if you live outside of a capital city in Australia, you're more than twice as likely to die of heart disease, which immediately everyone in the room is like, oh my gosh, is that true? And you're like, absolutely. But so it can be really grabby, but then don't I say statistics and data are like a bottle of alcohol. So let's say you have a 750 ml bottle of vodka, for example. If you want your statistic or your piece of data to have maximum power, you just pour it into one glass. You use one statistic that is incredibly powerful. You might use it twice, once at the start and once at the end to bookend. So for example, that one I just gave, at the end, you could repeat that statistic and then say, currently, say the statistic, and then end it with, but if we do this, whatever you're proposing, it doesn't have to be. Drop the mic. But if you put in like 10 statistics, think of your bottle of alcohol and then think of 10 shot glasses. You pour it out amongst 10 glasses, suddenly every glass is slightly weaker because you've spread it across so many glasses. So maximum power for any piece of data, any statistic, any graph, the less you have, the more powerful they are. Don't weaken the potency by having so many.
Yeah, there is another thing, because I was taking a course on narrative podcasts. I just finished it a couple of days ago, actually. And on the instructions, they say, for example, whenever you're going to speak about numbers, just like use something that rounds the number up. Like, don't use very specific numbers or very specific data, because since oral language, which is the case for public speaking, for example, is ephemeral, like you hear it and then the next word or the next sentence comes up, you are not going to retain that information. So you're more likely to retain the information if it's presented to you in a way of a metaphor or an illustration, than if you're given a specific number, a specific percentage, or like something that is very, very hard in terms of information.
I think that's really interesting. I think in terms of conversational podcasts, that's absolutely true. I think if you are presenting a case where you want somebody to say yes to, and you're trying to really importantly convey in persuasive speaking that I didn't just wake up this morning and come up with this idea. This is evidence-based and there is research to back up what I'm saying. It's important to include data points.
Okay.
A very small number. But the important thing, which I totally agree with what your course was saying, and it's something I teach my students, especially my clients who English is not their first language. And I have a number of those, both for keynotes internationally, but also for TED speeches and TED Talks. But they is slow down always. But a really important thing is pausing, and cadence is incredibly important. So anytime you want to include something that is important, and that will often include a really powerful statistic or piece of data if you're doing it, is you need to pause before you say the important sentence or the important phrase. And everyone, if they're looking on their phones or they're double screening, will look up. You need to leave the pause long enough that people will then look up from what they're doing and go, oh, why did that just stop? And then you say the important item, and then you pause again so they can take time for their brain to literally go, tick, I heard that, I processed that, and now I can move on to the next piece of data. Because if you don't pause and you've moved on to the next sentence, people have to move on to the next sentence with you, whether they've processed and fully heard and comprehended what you said previously. So pausing is one of the absolutely most essential components of persuasive speaking, because you're not just flapping your gums. You are saying important, compelling pieces of information, and you need people to hear it and then to process it and then to tick that they've comprehended it before they move on.
I love that you mentioned that. I think we can give pauses another name, which is silence. Like, people are so afraid of pauses, so afraid of silence. Maybe part of it is social media, because everything is so fast paced on like short form video. But there is meaning in pauses. There is purpose in them.
Absolutely. And that's why I like pauses over silence. To me, silence feels like emptiness.
Okay.
Where I'm not talking about silence. I am talking about strategic pauses for a purpose. Pauses for a purpose so the audience can process. So it's, it's very intentional, and it's so you are giving time. It is being not only smart, but a considerate speaker. You are allowing your audience to learn something and to process it and put it in their memory bank. That then is going to increase the likelihood of them taking action, rather than assuming that they're going to be able to pick it up and keep up with you at your pace if you're an expert in it and it's taken you 2 years, 5 years, 20 years to learn this, be considerate and understand it's going to take the audience a little bit longer. So you have to give them that pausing so they can hear it, comprehend it, lock it in.
Amazing. 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 I love that you covered that as well, because sometimes there is this fear like we have to be speaking all the time. No, there has to be that meaningful pause to allow the audience to absorb or re-engage with your voice.
Absolutely. And I think having worked with a number of people from a range of different cultures who are not, English is not their first language, it's very interesting. There are different cultures where pausing is definitely part of their culture. And so they are much more comfortable with pausing, whereas others, they just want to speak the whole time. And so that's very interesting to get them to slow down. Other cultures speak more quickly, other cultures speak more slowly, naturally. But I find when people have embraced English and they're most anxious about it, perhaps there are two types of non-original English speakers that I work with. Some are people who are still living in countries where the language they speak every day is their native language. And they've perhaps been asked to go and present at a conference in English. And they might have conversational English, but they don't feel like they have stage ready, professional, elite English. And so, working with them is one thing because that's not what they're speaking in every day. And then I have people who are now speaking in English every day professionally, but it's still not their first language. So then we're working with people predominantly on, accents. The main thing that we almost always work in is slow down. And everything immediately gets better. If you just take some deep breaths, check you've dropped your shoulders. Don't be wearing them as earrings. Drop your shoulders. And we get scripts, because we lock in our scripts because we want to make sure that the words we're going to use are the smartest words we would use on our best day. And then I help people with memorizing their scripts. There are lots of different ways to memorize. Almost everybody can memorize unless you have an acquired brain injury. You can memorize. You just need to find the strategy that works for you, because then you have the words and you can just focus on being present and being engaged with the audience, and you can slow down and you can think about your pacing. But people often, when I find they have taken on English and they're nervous about being good enough or their English being good enough, is they want to speak quite quickly because they associate quickly with being better.
Yeah.
And I'm like, no, quickly does not show you're better at English. But it very much is a really common perception. When you're on the room, you want to keep your sentences together or your phrases together, but you want to include these paces for people. And that's even more so if you have an accent that is quite thick. So, it's like, I have a thick Australian accent. It's not as thick as some, but I have to be mindful of that when I go and speak, even in English-speaking countries. If I'm speaking in Texas, I will get people tell me, slow down. So I'm like, great, thank you. And then I have to practice speaking a bit slower for that audience. So it's even, regionally to native English-speaking countries, you have to be mindful of pacing. But quick doesn't mean your English is better or more proficient. You really get next level is when you understand pacing and pausing and cadence. And the slower you get can sometimes be better. And it's definitely more considerate of the audience, especially if there is an accent involved.
Mm-hmm.
So pacing and slow is really, really important. And the other thing, just to remember kindness to the audience. That they're learning these things perhaps for the first time. You might be very comfortable with them, but they might be brand new for them. So make sure that you slow down and that you give them space after important ideas to process it and get the tick before you move on. And don't worry don't associate slow as being less proficient. That absolutely is not the case. Not at all. So slow is considerate. And I don't mean generally slow as you span out words, but at the end of sentences. Have those pauses in, as well as just generally speaking, slow it down. Slow it down.
Great. I love that you covered also the aspect of like sometimes this communication challenges can happen among native English speakers because you have access. So like it's not something exclusive to non-native speakers. It's just a communication thing in general.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, it happens all the time. And reverse, I have people who are native English speakers who have been given a magnificent opportunity to speak a keynote in another country, but it's a requirement that they deliver that talk in Spanish. And, so they're like, can you do it? If we give you a year, can you deliver this talk in Spanish? And so I will work with them on the front part, which is let's work on getting the talk right in English, doing all that strategy work I was talking about. What's your objective? Who are your target audience? What are their objections that they would make them want to say no? And how are you going to address them? And then we work through that. And then we find an expert in their particular field who is a native Spanish speaker and say, can you please look at this translation and work out what are the nuances, particularly in your field and your area, that would be phrased differently or said differently, and how do we apply that so this is delivered authentically? And I've worked with people who literally the only Spanish they can say is their talk. And, it's like ABBA. When ABBA first recorded, their initial album, two of them were English speaking and two of them couldn't speak a word of English but learnt it phonetically so they could sing the songs. And it's very similar. Some people will just learn their speech. They're not going to learn the whole language. They don't have time in their life for that. And then they just have to politely say, I'm sorry, if you want me to be on a panel afterwards or to take questions and answers, you need to provide a translator for that because that bit I can't do. But, there are lots of different ways. And regardless of whether you're a native English speaker or a natively speaker of another language, they're all beautiful. There's
Mhm.
challenges, both that. But again, as you said, me in Texas, I've got to remember to slow down. So there are lots of places where it's just always audience first. Think about your audience. Be considerate of your audience. If you want your audience to say yes, give them what they need to make that as easy as possible.
Great, great. Those are great perspectives. They're very extensive. At the end, I'm going to ask you to give us some more information or like about where we can learn more about this because this is a big field. Like we are just scratching the surface here. There is a lot more to learn, a lot more to analyze, a lot more to also relearn because we have conceptions here about what it means to speak in public that we need to reframe and reconsider. Okay, to wrap up, because uh, there's so much to cover. Oh my god, I have so many questions. But like to wrap up, I have a general question that is an actionable item for listeners, Juanita, and it is for a professional who's not a native English speaker who wants to start improving their public speaking in English. What can be some habits or some strategies or some actions that they can start taking in order to start developing this skill?
That's a great question. And I love that it's practical. And it's something that I work on with my non native English speaking clients, which is think about the individual questions that you might get asked most often, or the pieces of information, whether it's an anecdote, whether it's a statistic, that you might use most frequently in a talk. Write out what it is. Here's the anecdote. I would like to tell this story about this happy client. Write it out in English once you've translated it. And, maybe it's a paragraph, maybe it's two sentences, but work out parts of your script that you will use, maybe in a panel, maybe talking to your boss, whatever it is. And think of that as a little ingredient that you can put in a recipe. So stop trying to learn an entire script straight up. Start learning individual snippets and think of them as ingredients that you can pull in all different combinations for all different recipes, whether it's a Q&A panel, a different talk, a 20-minute talk, a 40-minute talk, a 6-minute talk. You can then choose what ingredients you have. So start learning the individual ingredients. So let's say this one is one paragraph long. Write it perfectly. Get it exactly how you would want to say it on your best day. And then start memorizing that. And the best way to memorize for most people is play it, record it yourself, saying it exactly how you want to on your free voicemail app, voice map on your phone, and then play it back. Because the exact same way that you learn the lyrics to a song and can sing along with it in the car or the shower is the exact same part of your brain that can memorize components of scripts. So learn that one bit until you've nailed it. And once it's memorized, then start performing, rehearsing it. So rehearse it, rehearse it, rehearse it. Memorize first, then rehearse. And then you own that bit for life. So anytime you want to put that into a talk or put that into an answer or put that into a media interview response, you've got it. So start writing, scripting your perfect little ingredients, memorize it and rehearse it. And you will slowly over time bank up this immense pantry of ingredients that you know and can perform, and you can use them in any combination that you like. So, and it's a bite-sized way to do it. It's completely achievable, and you could start that today.
Mm-hmm. So keep it small, keep it simple, go step by step, don't try to do everything at once.
Yes, everything at once can seem ominous and daunting and too hard. But think I just need to write the perfect paragraph about this or the perfect 2 sentences and learn that and then practice that. And then that's it. Tick, I own that. Move on to the next thing.
Mm-hmm. Great. Okay, Juanita, as I just mentioned, I know I wish I could cover more, but it will take us dozens of hours to explore all of the intricacies that public speaking involves. I'm sure our listeners want to learn more about this. If they want to continue expanding in their knowledge on public speaking, where can they find you? Are you on social? How can they get in touch? Where can they follow you?
You can best follow me on LinkedIn, and I'm on LinkedIn as Juanita Wheeler. And also, I will send you my link to my link tree. So I have a link tree. It includes a range of free guides, such as how to get started in public speaking and how to grow your business with public speaking. And there are also links to a range of podcast episodes there, as well as a link to my store where you can find out about how to work with me.
Great. So for all those listening, the links to Juanita's social channels are going to be there in the episode description. Go there, follow her, keep learning from her. I'm sure it's going to benefit you a lot, not just in terms of public speaking, but I think it is the good thing about learning public speaking is as it is a skill that you can transfer to other aspects of life. So it's going to be a win-win situation in every single aspect of your English communication skills. Juanita, thank you so much for sharing all this knowledge with us. And we will be happy to have our listeners go reach out and keep learning from you.
Thank you so much for having me. And if I could just leave you with one last thing to anyone who's still wavering and thinking, maybe I'm still not convinced public speaking is for me, or maybe I'll do it later. Just start. Don't wait. Just start. The sooner you start, the sooner you become brilliant.
Great. That's a great tip. Great tip. Thank you very much, Juanita. Amazing having you on the show today.